Thank you, Dr. Marks, for your very kind words. So this is, it's always nice to come back to the solar car workshop, and to be part of this program, so I appreciate it.
How many solar cars have you built?
Oh boy, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 4 or 5, I don't remember, I think it's 4. So, spaced out over 10 years, 15 years. So it's been a bit, yeah. So we'll talk more about that this afternoon. Do you like crayons? I do. All the colors. The box of 64. Crayons have always been a tool for children to express themselves and unleash their creativity. There's something magical about a box of crayons. The potential it holds, the possibilities it promises. Crayons are so iconic that a Yale University study found that the smell of crayons is one of the most recognizable smells. It ranked 18th on the list of familiar smells, trailing coffee and peanut butter that were number 1 and 2, but beating out cheese and bleach. That tells you just how possible the memory of crayons is in our lives. Personally, I'm envious of people that use crayons well. My lack of artistic skill doesn't stop me from using them, though. There's something about holding a crayon in your hand that connects you to your younger, more creative self. The version of you who wasn't afraid to make mistakes, to experiment, and to color outside the lines. When you speak to a large group, they say you should always analyze your audience. Well, as I look around the room, 2 things stand out. First, this group is very intelligent. You don't take on a project like a solar car without being intelligent. And second, every single person here has held a crayon at some point in their life. Solar car teams, moderators, and mentors, I can't really think of an audience that could make a bigger difference for our future. This morning, we celebrate not because you held crayons, but because you've chosen to take on a tremendously hard task. You're building a street-legal solar car for an incredibly difficult event. First, though, I want to challenge you to go back in time when it was okay to color outside the lines. Excuse me if you've heard this one before. A string walks into a restaurant, and the server points to a sign on the wall that says, "No strings served here." The string gets up, he walks outside, ties himself in a knot, and then he tussles up the little top of his string head. He goes back inside. The server stares at him and says, "Aren't you the string that was just in here?" The string looks shocked and replies, "I'm afraid not." I've always been jealous of creative people who can come up with jokes like that. What made the writer think to use the homophone, "afraid not," and turn it into a clever play on "afraid not"? It takes creativity to use words that in a way that we don't expect. That's what makes the joke funny. It's like picking up a red crayon and finding out that it colors blue. It's unexpected, and it opens your mind to new possibilities. So what does it take to be creative? Well, if somebody said, "Mr. Westlake, how can I be more creative?" My first response would be to go see my friend Carolyn Little. Carolyn's the most creative person I know. My second response would be fail fast and take chances. Richard Feynman, perhaps the best physics lecturer of all time, once said, "In order to develop ideas efficiently, I fail as quickly as possible." That's not an easy mindset to adopt because we've been conditioned to avoid failure at all costs. By the time you graduate from college, you'll have taken over 2,600 quizzes and tests, all geared towards finding the right answer. That's fine for some mathematical problems where there is, in fact, only one correct answer. But life isn't like that. Life is ambiguous. There are often many right answers. If you believe there's only one way to solve a problem, you'll stop looking at options as soon as you find the first solution. That mindset limits your creativity to the equivalent of the 4 crayons that you would get in a kid's meal at a restaurant. The world needs more people who think beyond those 4 crayons. Let me take you back to the summer of 1979. The Detroit Tigers were in 5th place in the American League East, I was heading towards my senior year in high school, and Boston Red Sox great Carl Yastrzemski was approaching his 3,000th career hit, becoming only the 15th major league player to do it at that time. Of course, the achievement brought him great media attention. At one point, a reporter said, "Yaz, aren't you worried all this attention will go to your head?" Yastrzemski replied, "I've been at bat over 10,000 times, and I've failed 7,000 of them. That alone keeps me from getting a big head." Think about that. A .285 lifetime batting average, which would be considered failing in school, is enough to get him into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Imagine what we could accomplish if we weren't afraid to fail 70% of the time. I'm sure Thomas Edison wished he would have had that level of success, and I'm sure I would get along fine with only 18 of my 64 crayons. Creativity and success often come down to perseverance. Edison once said, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." That's a lesson we can all carry with us, whether we're swinging a bat, inventing a light bulb, or building a solar car. Pablo Picasso said, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist after growing up." That quote's always stuck with me. I often wonder, does the fear of failure effectively take our crayons away? Does growing up mean I have to look at everything the same way? It seems that as we get older, we get more specific, but in the process, we lose a lot of our imaginative power. One summer, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my children, and we decided to draw pictures of the outdoors. My picture, of course, had blue skies and green grass, because that's the correct way to draw the outdoors. But when I looked at my 8-year-old daughter Jenna's paper, her sky was red and her grass was dark gray. I asked her why she had chosen those colors, and she replied, "Because that's how it looked last night before we went to bed." Wow. There I was, dragging my poor box of crayons down the well-worn cattle path of adulthood, while Jenna's picture showed creativity and observation. It made me wonder, had I lost my ability to look at things differently? Take Edouard Benedictus, for example. Edouard Benedictus was a French chemist, and he was working in his laboratory. The year was 1903. Benedictus climbed a ladder to fetch reagents from a shelf and inadvertently knocked a glass flask to the floor. He heard the glass shatter, but when he glanced down, to his astonishment, the broken pieces of the flask still clung together in their original contour. On questioning his assistant, Benedictus learned that the flask had recently held a solution of cellulose nitrate. It's a liquid plastic, which had evaporated, apparently depositing a thin coating of plastic on the flask interior. Because the flask appeared clean, the assistant, in haste, had not washed it but returned it directly to the shelf. That very week, the week of Benedictus's laboratory discovery, a Paris newspaper ran a feature article on a recent rash of automobile accidents. Benedictus read that most of the drivers were seriously injured by the shattered glass of their windshield. That evening, he wrote in the diary, "Suddenly there appeared before my eyes an image of the broken flask. I leapt up, I dashed to my laboratory, and I concentrated on the practical possibilities of my idea." It may have been serendipity that led Edouard to 3-ply safety glass, but it was his ability to recognize a need that made it effective. See if you can guess who Mark Twain was talking about when he said, "What the world is today, good and bad, it owes to this man. Everything can be traced to this source, but we're bound to bring him homage. For the bad that his colossal invention has brought about is overshadowed 1,000 times by the good which mankind has been favored." Well, I'm sure my friend Dr. Marx recognized the quote about Johannes Gutenberg. Like Benedictus and his happy accident, Gutenberg was able to link two unrelated things, the wine press and the coin punch into an idea that would pave the trail for the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. What if he saw a wine press only as an object that could be used to squish grapes? What if he hadn't spent years perfecting the alloy needed to make movable type? Gutenberg worked through so many problems that he proved to be as good at failing as Thomas Edison would be some 400 years later. Both men showed amazing creativity was born from very hard work. Well, by now you might be thinking, I don't feel creative, or my crayons are lost somewhere in my room. So what do? The answer is simple. Build your creative toolbox. Look and learn. You're already doing that being part of a solar car team. When you're stuck for ideas, go for a walk. Explore the aisles of a hardware store, or browse the stacks at a library. Look at art. Read children's books. Find inspiration in unexpected places. And most importantly, take chances. Write a poem or short story. Build a solar car. Fail fast and fail quickly. Every failure adds a new crayon to your toolbox of crayons. Isaac Newton once said, "If I've seen farther, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants." I was lucky to have a giant in my life, my mom. She was the MacGyver of crafts and one of the most creative people I had ever known. If I have any creativity, it's because of her. She never let anybody take my crayons away and always encouraged me to take chances, both in school and in life. I still remember my first science essay. I wrote about Jacques Cousteau, and I carefully cut the paper into the shape of a double scuba tank. My fourth grade teacher, Miss Schneider, who was also very creative, loved it. And thanks to her, I took more creative chances throughout my educational journey. Consider yourself lucky that you have mentors and teachers who support you in the same way as you work on your solar cars. Becoming creative doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lifetime of experiences to build a box of crayons. You'll still need to memorize facts, practice problems, and write lab reports. Edison said, "Opportunities are missed by people because they're dressed in overalls and they look like work." Don't forget to take advantage of those times when people encourage you to take chances, whether it's writing a poem or building a solar car or coming up with the next great innovation. Linus Pauling, the only person to win 2 unshared Nobel Prizes, said, "In order to have a good idea, you need to have a lot of ideas. Work hard at things that don't come easily." Even Dorothy Parker, the American writer and poet, admitted, "I hate writing, but I love having written." So, build with clay, make up a song, fabricate a solar car, design a small thermonuclear device. Okay, don't build a small thermonuclear device. Look at things differently, but most importantly, get out your crayons and start creating. The world needs your creativity, your persistence, and your willingness to color outside the lines. Finally, Dr. Marks, thank you for making a difference in thousands of lives. I am 100%, I am convinced that the next generation of scientists, of engineers, of innovators is going to be okay because of the work that you have done. Even for my own children. My son Sam started building a solar car when he was in 9th grade. And I remember when he came down to the Solar Car Challenge and how enamored he was, not just with the process of building a car, but the event and running that around Texas Motor Speedway over and over and over, and how incredibly kind and supportive you were to him. Now he's a mechanical engineer. He makes a lot more money than I do. And so it turned out okay, but a lot of that goes back to the work that you did. Finally, thank you, and good luck with the Solar Car Challenge.